Thank you, Yemi, for that background reports there. And this morning we shall be looking at the Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms report, and we will be examining the issues arising from the report, and to discuss the committee report this morning. We shall be having the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform report. Let me introduce Taiwo Oyedele, Chairman, Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms. He joins us via Zoom. Glad to have you join us on the program, Mr. Oyedele.
Thank you and good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. Joining us here in the studio is Philip Orji, tax analyst and founder, Association of Concerned Citizens of Nigeria on Revenue and Economy, author of the bill seeking for the establishment of the National Tax Crimes Oversight and Ombudsman Commission. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
I'm glad. Thank you very much.
Good. Claire.
Yes, okay. And of course, we have our guests joining us from our Kano studio, Sheikh Kamal Alkali, retired Assistant Director of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Sheikh Alkali, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to you, and indeed, good morning to all Nigerians on Good Morning Nigeria program.
Thank you, Sheikh.
All right.
Thank you, Sheikh. Good morning to you too. Now, let's do our first question to the chairman of the tax reform, Oyedele. The mandates for a robust tax system took off in August, and in less than 3 months, you have come up, with the report. Can you give us the highlights for the far-reaching recommendations preferred by the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policies and Tax Reforms? What are the highlights of the report?
Yes, thank you very much. So I think the starting point for me would be to give a quick overview of the work of the committee that was set up by the President, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. So this committee, which is the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, was set up and inaugurated on the 8th of August 2023 with a broad mandate covering 3 pillars. Number 1 is fiscal governance. So this is about how we manage our revenue, our spending, our borrowing, and also ensuring that there's coordination between various policy organs of government, particularly fiscal and monetary policies, but also ensuring that there is coordination with the subnational, particularly states, but also local governments. And the second pillar is on revenue transformation, which includes tax and non-tax revenue. And in terms of non-tax revenue, includes oil and non-oil, including solid minerals, including government assets, including government-owned enterprises. How can we optimize value for our country? And the third pillar is on economic growth facilitation, which is focusing on how do you remove impediments in the way of businesses, in the way of individuals, so that people can prosper. And then when they prosperous and they succeed in their enterprises, they can then pay a share of that back to the government by way of taxes. So the work of the committee was divided into 3 milestones. The first one was what we call the quick wins, which we're supposed to do within 30 days. And then the second phase is critical reforms, where it's, under that phase, we're looking at rewriting the tax laws and even proposing amendments to the Constitution to clarify taxing rights, issues of fiscal federalism, for example, who should collect VAT. And then the third phase is full implementation. And the work of the committee is designed to both recommend and also support implementation concurrently. And that's what we have did. So what we did, about 2 weeks ago, we submitted the first report to Mr. President on the quick wins. And those quick wins focus on three major areas, which are the most pressing issues for our country as at this moment. Number one is, what can government do in terms of interventions to cushion the impact of fuel subsidy removal? We know that this has meant that Nigerians have made a lot of sacrifices, and for the people at the bottom of the ladder, life has been difficult, and we need to recognize that. So our recommendations focus on what government could do to meaningfully help Nigerians who are struggling as a result of that very important decision, but which of course has been painful for many Nigerians. The second area that we focus on with our quick win report was in terms of fiscal policy interventions to help stabilize the Naira exchange rate. We all know very well that once Naira is depreciating in the foreign exchange market, it tends to have far-reaching implications, including, the price of goods and services on the streets is affected. Even sometimes items that you cannot figure out any foreign input into them, maybe Gary, for example, people just increase prices because of the Naira value. So we thought that it would be important for the fiscal authorities and the monetary authorities to work together and see what can we do to make sure that the exchange rate of the Naira to major foreign currencies, particularly the dollar, is stable. And that would also help us in the medium to long term to attract foreign currency liquidity in terms of foreign direct investment and so on and so forth. And the third aspect of our report focus on other important economic benchmark and variables, including how can we generate more employment, particularly for our youth, including how can we promote exports, particularly of non-oil products, services, and intellectual property, including our creative sector. So that's the summary in a nutshell. That is what we have done. And then now that the report has been submitted to Mr. President, we're now working through how to implement those various recommendations, because some of them we require that we have executive orders by Mr. President. Some of them we require that we have ministerial orders by the finance minister. Some of them we require the central bank to issue circulars. Of course, the central bank is independent, so we're only just recommending to them. They are at liberty to accept or not accept our recommendations. And we also have some of those initiatives will be implemented by the FRS. And some of that we have already seen, has started. So that's the summary of what we have done.
Mr. Yedede, thank you very much for that very precise summary of your mandate, which, of course, you were expected to, turn in 30 days, and you did, in fact, turn in the quick win reforms in 30 days. So for that, we appreciate the fact that you were able to compress them and incessantly. But talking about your recommendations, you've told us about the quick win reforms you expected to do, and one of those is in the area of impact of the subsidy removal on Nigerians. What kind of intervention that will be required. What specifically were your recommendations in this regard that would probably require either an executive order or ministerial order or even a circular from the CBN?
Yeah, thank you. Clearly, we tried to do a summary of some of the key recommendations which we have circulated. It's in the public space. It's been published by the media. We haven't published the report itself, and that's because we don't want to, come in the way of our own success, because if you put out too much details, it can come in the way of implementation, because some of those reports have details about what we'll do with some government agencies. Some of them are things we want to do with governors at the sub-national level. So it may not be appropriate to put out the full report when you're still discussing with those stakeholders. They'll feel like you're trying to, set them up against the public in case they decide that they want, a different format of your recommendation. They might even decline some of those recommendations. So for that reason, we haven't published the report itself. But in terms of the key recommendations that we're able to share at this point, include like the suspension of VAT on diesel was actually a recommendation from our committee. And our reason for recommending that is that if you have removed subsidy on petrol and prices are going up, and if factories and industries, many of them actually use diesel, why do you want to impose tax on diesel and make it more expensive? So we recommended that. Another recommendation we have is that public sector, the federal government, has issued a wage award of about 35,000 naira for civil servants. We thought that the private sector also needs to enjoy something similar to that. So one of our recommendations is that if a private sector employer increases the salaries of their low-income earners, or they provide transport subsidy or transport allowance, or in fact employ more people than they have employed in the past 3 years, then they should get some additional tax relief from the government. In addition to that, we have recommendations around how do we ensure that as part of this whole process, due to subsidy removal, we reduce the impact on small businesses. So we also have recommendations that will help small businesses to get some relief so that they don't have to pay so much taxes on the little profit that they are making. We also have that as part of our recommendation. We also have a recommendation that we hope that the governors would accept, which is what we call a spending framework. And our thought around that is that the windfall that the states particularly are getting now because of subsidy removal should be spent back to take care of the people in the areas that are most important to us. Looking at the multidimensional poverty index, we don't think that the right thing for any governor to do, or any government for that matter, is to now start building airports, flyovers. We think that we should address basic needs around primary education, around healthcare, around clean water, sanitation, those things that our people are deprived of, that is making them multidimensionally poor. We think that's the focus of the government, and we are trying to create a framework, a portal where you can go to a website or even an app, and it will show you all the 36 states in Nigeria, 774 local governments, FCT and federal governments, and you can see the project they are working on, the stages of completion with videos and pictures, that even the ordinary Nigerian can visit a location and take a picture and say, now this project does not exist, it's an audio project. Or you can say, yes, indeed, I've seen the project, but it's been abandoned, or indeed it has been completed. And that can help us build trust with the people, but more importantly, improve the quality of spending to give back to the Nigerians who have made so much sacrifices through the subsidy removal.
Are they sustainable? I know these are quick wins, but are there, in the long run, are they sustainable? For instance, the 35,000 naira, for civil servants, is this supposed to be in the short term? And in the long term, are some of these recommendations, are they sustainable?
Yes, we think that. So first and foremost, those 35,000 wage award is for a short period of time, about 6 months. But the plan is that by the time that 6 months is running out, the minimum wage law will be due for a review, because legally speaking, you have to review the minimum wage every 5 years. The last one was done in 2018, so it's going to be due, or 2019 rather, it will be due for review by 2024. The second part to your question is actually, we think that a lot of Nigerians are underpaid. If you look at inflation today and what you need to live a decent life as a honest person, nobody can survive even living as a single person. You can't survive on 30,000 naira a month. So we have to own up to our reality and say what level of income is decent enough to live a meaningful life honestly without stealing. Once we address that question, we then have to, in parallel, address the question of productivity. We need to improve productivity across the patch, both public sector and the private sector. The more productive we are, the more we can create economic value, the more government has the ability to pay our people more. I think this is a conversation that we rarely talk about in Nigeria. We need to improve productivity. But yes, we think that this 35,000 naira, in fact, is not even enough. We need to be thinking about a minimum wage that is enough to make you, live meaningfully.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Oyedele, for the insight into the reform. And I know that your recommendations are actually very far-reaching. We still have in the studio Mr. Orji, and you have listened to the highlights of the reform, the report submitted to the president. You, as a tax analyst, let me first have your thought. What do you think about the whole, the recommendations?
Thank you very much. It's my Oga. If I have my way of speaking pidgin English, this concerns everybody.
Yes.
Do you understand me?
I don't.
So the professor, you see, I always enjoy him because I hear what he said. But the case we have now, some people are lacking to even know what he's saying. It's close to 80%. Don't joke with that. You understand that? So I'm not blaming him because he's a lecturer. A lot of things he's doing cannot allow him to come down the way I could do.
Okay. So now
I'm just coming. I'm going to the place you asked me.
Okay.
Mr. President meant well for Nigerians. In fact, I have very much confidence in what they have outlined even before the report came out. If you have children and you are poor, you have no money, you start to engage your 10 years old child to, like, Salah is coming.
Yeah.
Christmas is coming. Please let the ones of 4 years. This is a child that's supposed not to know. But because of the level of poverty in the family, you now engage the child in the arrangement in the house. Use your old clothes. Let's buy. I'm trying to say why the president has to involve the student for the first time. So I enjoy it. Now, are they actually serious about our concerns? Yes. Even the IMF have their representative here. It's not that this is a serious matter. But why I'm not panicking is that we have a way out. I'm not part of those who say Nigeria will die. No. We will even surpass our predicament and take our position as a giant of Africa economically. Okay. In fact, if what I thought, we are working as a team, that is the team we know President Ahmed Bola Tinubu for. He don't believe in one single kind of, I know it or no. He always engage people, come and say your mind, which is what he has been preaching from day one. He said, look, if National Assembly is not committed to whatever we are doing as a recommendation, like the prof is talking about, whatever we are doing here will be like, if you won't see any results. When they went to Europe for a retreat, he still continued to say it from the central bank governor, the minister of finance, that this is not a matter of saying it. If you don't take it to the law, you're not doing it. It will even work. So that is why I said, we're not talking this hope. We should preach it in the way people will now be able to wait. When you tell somebody to wait, the food is on fire. The person should see some smoke. For now, the people that we are seeing is because most of the people of Nigeria are, please, sorry, I have to tell you this. This is concerning the lower people. Don't forget about the people who speak big grammar. Look, people are told to wait. And I am part of the people who want to tell them to wait. In Hausa language, I speak Igbo, I speak the local pidgin, and I can speak English. So automatically, I can connect the whole Nigeria. I'm a tax analyst. If you're a tax analyst, must you go and bring one English so that nobody will hear? You must calm down so that if actually you are doing your job. Now, we have a way out. I said it before, and I'll continue to say that. So it's the
implementation you're talking about now? How
I would rather talk about my bill.
Okay.
Yes. If I start to discuss what Prof said there, it will take me out of the lane. I talk about tax because that is what I know.
Yeah, we're talking about tax reform.
I can't say more than that. So many other things that Prof is saying, there's something to do with policies that will handle the management whenever, even if the money arrives. If you don't have good managers of the money, it will not go the right way, which I will not dabble into so that I can be able to focus on what I thought I know about.
Okay, Mr. Oji, you want to talk about the bill, and I don't know, as at 2015, as at 2015, we heard that over 10 million Nigerians were not paying. I don't know, the current statistics now, taxes, and we also know that Nigeria ranks. The statistics says Nigeria ranks low on the global case of paying taxes, and our tax to
Several
GDP.
people are not in the tax net.
Yes, tax to GDP ratio is also the lowest in the world, maybe less than 6%.
Yeah.
So now, from your perspective, and the perspective of this bill, how realistic is this task of reforming the tax system, the taxation system in Nigeria compared to what is obtained in other parts of the world?
Thank you. You hear when Prof said they're going to review the tax law. Good. Now, we are still, as we are talking now, because it's yet to be done, maybe tomorrow, we are still operating 1939 law. The Federal Bureau of Internal Revenue, 39, even before independence. Now, no one can use such type of method today, electronic service delivery, that we are using in taxing. So that particular thing alone makes me know that when I came back about 2017, that I started pushing this bill, 7 years now, it is not easy for people to listen to you. You see, so because people are so confused, people are paying tax. In fact, you said something about people not paying.
Yes, what is the core mandate of this law, of this 1939 law?
They are overpaying.
Yes.
How?
Wait now. You are asking me to listen to me. This discussion is very, very, very important to Nigerians this morning. Do you know why I said you should wait? 1939 law is the time you come and carry a stick, cross the market road, like my mechanically, or you are walking in a barn, somebody will touch you, show me your paper. And as I know, somebody will collect my own because I have no photo, nothing. He will now claim Philip Oji. He show you the paper of Philip Oji. You no longer ask him, he will go. You will not collect any tax. So the truth is that when Babangida come on board, that touch you at the back and say your paper stopped because VAT entered. Value added tax was down 1992. Even though he's an army man, but I used to like his method. He worked fast. But there was no National Assembly to do the right thing in that area. But did he do well in that? Yes, he did. Sparing tax to the 3 tiers of government, the local government. Before it was FBIR of 1939. But when he did that, you now see that if you buy something, you pay tax. You understand? Because if you don't do tax, well, you see something that resembles the 1929 women riot of female rights on Kuti. People that are paying that tax is the first person you should concern about.
So what is the gap in the law? Because if we spend the whole time, we have our guests. What is the gap in the law, in the 1939 law, that your bill is seeking to address?
This is where I'm going now. Listen. What my bill is an inspector of tax. In 1862, America went to UK to copy their method of taxing. You can't do tax without learning what others are doing that made them to do well. Now, if you go, I don't want to mention many things, but data in the United States represents what I want to do here. Copying people like Inspector General of Taxation of Australia, /Ombudsman, the SUTC, /Ombudsman of the United Kingdom, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration of the United States. These are the people who will do the job and report to National Assembly because the owners of these taxes, the community and the parliament. Look, Nigerians and the parliament don't know what's going on in our taxation. It may not be actually that the federal land revenue is not doing a good job. You have to give somebody something you can manage. The porosity in that place, they cannot do it. So there's OECD demand that countries, their member countries, should have tax inspector without border. If you don't have the ACR we're talking about, that we should have, you cannot communicate that what they call automatic information sharing of the OECD won't. And let me tell you that international taxation of Nigeria is close to about 20 trillion naira loss a year. How much are we collecting? If we are losing such money in international taxation, base erosion, profit sitting, this and that, all this illicit financial flow, even terrorist financing. I don't always like to allow that one. You see that you are the cause of your trouble, that you are buying gun every day, wasting money you're supposed to have done, and things are going to be controlled by data, and money will flow in. Let me tell you, our buying and paying VAT on daily basis, this transfer you do 5 times to your brother, you do before you finish in a month, is over 160 billion naira.
Okay, let me just interject.
So why would somebody say we're not paying tax?
Okay, we're paying tax. Thank you, Mr. Orji, for your contributions there. Maybe we should just go to our Kano studio, where Sheikh is standing by. And let me just throw this question to you. Are the director, the assistant director of Federal Inland Revenue Service, and former. Okay, now you have looked at the reform, the presidential committee reform submitted, the report submitted to the presidency. How do you think the tax reforms, will help to promote more equitable and progressive tax system in the country?
Thank you very much. Number one, I have so much confidence in the membership of the committee headed by Mr. Tayo Oyedele, and I know they will give good recommendations to Mr. President. I have read the report, and to the best of my understanding, relating to tax reforms, they have done well. Though there is an area I saw, and I hope and pray that maybe I didn't understand, that they are recommending the business of foreign exchange that is done through the black market to be illegalized. And in another place of the report I saw, they are trying to tax the same black market business they are proposing to be illegalized. So it appears to me it's like you are legalizing illegality. But as I said earlier, I hope it is me that I didn't understand those recommendations. But reality is that tax is the most sustainable means of revenues to finance expenditure. So anything relating to the reforms in the tax system is very, very welcome to me. And for me, there are parts of the tax laws that have long been overdue to be expunged or to be revolutionized. I mentioned in the first time that the issue of stamp duties, a 1930 Act, till today you have 2 kobo in stamp duties. They are still talking of 2 kobo. If you check section 39, section 42, section 74, section 68, they are still talking of 2 kobo. Section 15 is talking of 26 kobo. Other sections, 5 kobo, 6 kobo, 10 kobo, like that. So that needs to be overhauled completely. And even in the Companies Income Tax Act, if you look at section 13, though the section is capped Nigerian companies, but in reality it's talking of taxation of non-Nigerian companies, non-resident companies. Initially it was talking of physical presence, that for a company to pay tax in Nigeria, it has to be physically present. But the world is a global village. You no longer talk of physical presence. The effort made in 2020 by the president in a presidential order on economic presence, they were talking of significant economic presence. I would want to see that significant removed. Economic presence is economic presence. So anybody that is deriving income from Nigeria, no matter how much, should pay tax. And worse still, I'm not doubting any Minister of Finance, I'm not doubting their integrity or their competence, but the law requires the minister to determine what is significant. That to me is too subjective. So that is an area, and other areas that need reform, VAT and all other tax types. Our collection relating to stamp duty is zero. There's something with capital gains tax, but I'm not talking on Capital Gains Tax Act. That area will go to administration now, FIRS and other state internal revenue services. That one, there is need to train and retrain their staff. That human capacity building is key. When the law is passed, you need to understand and apply the provisions of the law. So if you are not well trained, your capacity is low, then we remain where we are. So we need that. And we also need to apply apparatus that will make us to technologically be able to do the work of the taxman, to assess, at least to assess, and then to report back to the government what is collected. The FIRS has done a good job and is still developing the Tax Promax, which is a software that is targeting all the tax processes. They are still developing it, they have not finished. So from our part, we are advising them on areas that we see they need to improve or they need to cover. And I'm happy the committee has also recommended some things to them. Then there is also an area where government should come in. That Section 24, paragraph F of the 1999 Nigerian Constitution requires every citizen to declare his income correctly and honestly to tax revenue authorities. I don't see that taking place. I come from the tax administration part, the FIRS, and I know how we suffer in trying to make people pay. So there is need for real orientation, a reorientation of Nigerians to know that a tax evader is an enemy of the state. We, as far as I'm concerned, one, we need to catch them young. And it started during the reign of Ifeko as the chairman of FIRS, that we need to have some jingles at nursery school level. Let our children begin to know that without taxation, the public expenditure cannot be sustained. So rather than sing "Old MacDonald has a farm," rather than sing "Fire on the Mountain," we should begin to have some songs relating to, you know, the issue of loving your country, the issue of trying to contribute to your country, and the issue of paying taxes. And that is why I say to Mr. President that if it is possible, Have a ministry for national orientation, not just an agency. And then a ministry for taxation or for revenues, not being under the Federal Minister of Finance. So these are my recommendations. And for me, Mr. President is committed, and the committee is also committed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheikh, for your thoughts on the tax reforms there. And I believe that Mr. Taiwo Oyedele listens to some of the issues that you have raised, the issue of tax evasion and the need to build capacity of staff to implement some of these recommendations. I would like Mr. Oyedele to speak to some of these issues, especially the issue of the tax evasion and how to enhance compliance, and the need for capacity building of the staff to be able to ensure proper implementation of the recommendations of the reform.
Thank you very much, and thank you to my brother in Kano there for the very good points, and also my brother there at the studio. So let me start with the point by Mr. Oji. So he has a very good point around ensuring that we have proper visibility and supervision over what the tax authorities are doing. It's almost like saying, you have the auditor, but who is auditing the auditors? We are also working on that as part of the work of my committee, but in a slightly different format. So we are focusing on the Office of the Tax Ombudsman that will be reporting to the National Assembly like he has recommended. The only reservation we have is setting up another organ or inspector general for taxes, which may end up creating a lot of overhead. But also, you're going to struggle to find people who have the right knowledge to be able to do the work effectively, because when you say Inspector General for Taxes, people are going to be thinking about people like the police. And we already have within the existing legal framework the opportunity to be able to do that. We are going to strengthen that and create the Office of the Tax Ombudsman with professionals with the right of experience. We're speaking to some countries where they have that now to learn from them. I was in Cape Town last week with the African Tax Administration Forum and discussing with the Tax Ombudsman for South Africa. So let me leave it at that, and then we can take it forward subsequently. To the point made by my brother in Kano. So the first one is, why is it that we want to introduce excise duties on transactions in the parallel market, and at the same time we said we want to outlaw transactions in the parallel market? Very good point. But as of today, actually, the law does not encourage you to go and sell foreign exchange or buy it in the parallel market. So the law recognizes the official market of the authorized by the central bank. But we know the reality is that if you can't find dollars and you have medical issues to deal with, or you have kids abroad and they're stranded, or you need to travel for emergency, it doesn't matter what the law says, you find the dollars where you can, or you have even inputs for your factory that you cannot find in Nigeria. You have the option of shutting down your factory or just buying dollars where you can find it. So what we are trying to do, and this is a combination of policies without dictating to the central bank, because many of these policies are monetary. So the central bank is fully in charge of those, and the central bank is autonomous. But working together as one government, what we are hoping we can do is to move all legitimate transactions to the official market. The central bank has done that already by lifting the ban to access foreign exchange on the 43 items, which in fact are more than 1,200 items when you look at the HS code from customs. Then we are hoping that what would also happen is all legitimate participants, whether it's broad change, whether it's financial, technology companies that we call fintech, the likes of Flutterwaves and the rest of them, So once you have done that, you've taken the excuse away of going into the parallel market. Now, today, even though the parallel market is not legal, even as we speak, if you go there and you have export proceed and you go and sell it, we will not say you're exempted from tax. We ask you to pay tax because the laws allow the tax authorities and government to tax any economic activities, whether it is legal or not. It's a secondary. Otherwise, you can easily avoid paying taxes by doing illegality. You are earning a living, but you are not paying taxes. So that is not a problem. In international tax law, is recognized that the government can tax anything, whether it's legal or not. The intention, though, is not that we want to raise revenue. The way we are looking at it is almost like a fine. So a fine to say, don't go and sell your dollars there. Take your dollar to the clean formal market and sell there where things are decent, price can be determined in a fair way, so we don't damage our economy unnecessarily. So that is the way we are looking at the excise duty, and the draft bill is being drafted now, and that will be available to the public. We will take input from Nigerian people and, if necessary, fine-tune our recommendations as may be necessary. The other points around significant economic presence, and I see the points he's making to say, why don't you remove significant from it so that any economic presence, you should pay tax in Nigeria. So while that will be desirable, it may give us other problems in the sense that Nigeria may become uncompetitive. I'll give you, an example. If someone is, transiting, I know we don't have a lot of transit in Nigeria, but we're hoping it will happen. If somebody needs to go to Ghana from Europe and they decide to fly to Lagos, and they say, well, let me see Nigeria, maybe I can spend 4 days and just see these Nigerian people that are always very elegant and very excited and energetic, right? While they are spending 3 or 4 days in Nigeria, they could come to Abuja, they could stay in Lagos, they could walk from their hotel in the evening and do official work. Now, if you now say to them that they have to pay taxes in Nigeria, what will happen is nobody will do transit in Nigeria anymore. The same way that many of us who are Nigerians, we go to Europe, we go to America, we go to other countries in Africa. I was in South Africa last week. I worked there. So South Africa should not ask me to pay tax just because I was there for 4 days. So you need to still draw a threshold that does not make your country uncompetitive. That is why the word significance is used, to make sure that that threshold is not something that discourages people from coming to Nigeria. And the last point, I do agree with him on tax compliance. I think we need to increase our threshold as to what we consider acceptable. I do think that many people in political offices today, including elected and appointed people, have not earned the moral rights by way of legal tax compliance with taxes to hold those offices. And that's why in many countries, before you are appointed or before you are elected, they scrutinize your tax compliance record for 2 reasons. Number one is you must be the person who is patriotic and compliant with the constitution that says you must declare your income honestly and pay your taxes to the appropriate authorities. Number 2 is that people who don't pay their taxes don't have the right to preside over taxpayers' money. It's an aberration. If I have been evading taxes, why should I now be a governor who is deciding how to spend taxpayers' money? So that is the reason why it's critical for us going forward. Not only ensuring that multinationals pay their taxes correctly, not only ensuring that corporations, whether they are Nigerian or international, pay their taxes correctly, not only should we ensure that individuals pay their taxes correctly, we must focus on our leaders particularly because they have to lead by example and by setting the tone from the top. We have to ensure that our tax system does not have sacred cows or people who are above the law. Some of the events that happened during the past administration, still very painful to me today when I remember them, that there were 2 governors that were convicted all the way to the Supreme Court of stealing public money. And then the former president, pardoned them like they never committed any offense. That was a big damage to the system. We're hoping that going forward, things like that will not happen. And everybody will know, like any decent country and society that we want our country to be, that you must pay your taxes and there has to be consequences for tax evasion. And when those taxes have been paid, they must be used for the purpose and benefit of the people.
Thank you very much for all the answers that you have given, and indeed we in the area in the tax of reforming our tax administration system, we must not just be hopeful. We must also put in strategies to ensure that people do the right thing, and the right thing in the case of our discussion is, of course, to pay our taxes. Now, Mr. Oji here talked about a 1939 law. He also, made mention of the fact, from his perspective, that he thinks that more Nigerians are Nigerians are even paying more taxes. But from the records, way back 2015, according to the statistics, from over 77 million work strength, only 10 million were paying taxes, and the rest is lost in tax evasion and all that. And that was one of the reasons why the former president, during the time of the Minister of Finance, came up with a number of, measures to recover, non-oil tax revenue. You remember VATES was introduced, which elapsed. It had its own merit, and of course there were criticism. There was also the voluntary, a similar, strategy for offshore assets and all that. Those were measures taken by the previous administration to improve, the non-oil tax revenue, and it did work. But like I said, there were criticisms. Is there anything that your committee is doing to address the gaps in the 1939 law, and also to make tax payment more voluntary now than, being hopeful that, people will do the right thing and pay their taxes?
Yes, very good question. So there are two important things we are doing. The first one is we are rewriting the tax laws. So the law of 1939 that Mr. Oji referred to is the stamp duty law. So 1939, nobody had thought that the internet would be invented. And today we are forcing ourselves to apply that law into the digital economy. Of course, it's going to be chaotic, and that's what we're seeing. So we've concluded that there's no point trying to amend our laws. It's like having a car that is 40 years old and you keep patching it. You remove the boot and put another one, remove the engine tomorrow, the tires, you can't recognize the make. When you can easily just put a new car together. So all the major tax laws, we are rewriting them. We are rewriting Nigeria's national tax policy as well. We're developing a policy on government spending. There has to be some principles and framework for how government spend money. I saw a report about 3 days ago in the press that indicates that about 15 airports in Nigeria are not viable because the governors have built an airport because they want to fly to their own capital city, not because the people need it. Many of the airports can't even boast of one flight a week, and they are being maintained with taxpayers' money. They have been built with taxpayers' money in the first place, and they are being maintained with taxpayers' money at the expense of primary schools, basic health centers, road from farm to market, vocational center that our people truly need. So we are writing the law. So that 1939 problem will be solved. The second thing we are trying to do is we are leveraging on technology. There's a project that is called Data for Tax. And Data for Tax is similar to what is done in many countries. While I was in South Africa last week, the Commissioner General for the South African Revenue Service, said to me that they have identified up to 4 million of their taxpayers where they have said to them, they don't need to file returns because the tax authority in South Africa already has information that they need. They knew what they were buying. They knew the money they made. You use your card, you use your phone, anything you do, the taxman was seeing it live. So they had used that information to prepare their tax returns on their behalf. And they said, within 5 seconds, you can file your returns. Just log in and just tap, and then you file your returns because everything has been prepared by the government using the intelligence that is available. In fact, they developed a machine that is the tax authority's office. It's like an ATM. And they're going to be placing it beside every ATM anywhere they can find them. which means you can actually interact with the tax office without seeing a human being. And it's so easy to interact. So we want to do something like that in Nigeria called data for tax. What this will do is that it would ensure that whatever anyone is doing is within the visibility of government for two reasons. We would identify people who are poor, and government can use that opportunity. This one of, you are sharing rice, and at the end of the day, only 1/4 of a bag is for a whole village. The reason is because there's a lot of corruption in the process of transferring those interventions from the starting point to the end point. If you have a proper database that identifies who is poor, what will happen is you credit their bank accounts if they have bank accounts. If they don't have bank accounts, you credit their phones as food stamp. Don't even give me rice. What I want is yam? Maybe I want gari. Why are you giving me rice? Give me the food stamp, and I can go and get what I want in a way that is transparent and can be audited. So this would also help us to identify people who have the wealth and they are not paying the taxes. So VAT, like you said, was an attempt to bring some money in through a way of tax amnesty. And there was a voluntary offshore asset declaration scheme for people who have stashed money abroad. Yeah, I would say that those schemes could have been more successful if we had used data. Because when you confront people with data about their lives, then there's no argument. They just comply. But when you appeal to their conscience and say, please, Nigeria needs your help, they will ignore you because they know you can't find out. And even sometimes when you find out, there's no consequences. So those two initiatives, rewriting the laws and using technology, will help us address that significant gap we've always had in our tax system.
Oji here was nodding his head in disapproval to some of the issues that he raised. Yes, you want to respond?
I want to say something.
Yes, please go ahead.
So what I'm saying is this. I respect him a lot. He knows many things, not just local, the globe. But let me say something. If you, like he said, inspector, he's no longer inspector. People are just worried about the name and now change it. Metamorphose to what you just read, National Tax Crime Oversight and Ombudsman Commission, to look lighter. People are afraid. Look, if you don't have a startup, because he did not refuse in my argument of having somebody to come and oversight what the people collecting is doing, that he can never say no to that. I know he can do that. Now, if you refuse to have that people that report to the National Assembly that he said, and you say only ombudsman to report to them, it is a dog without teeth. What do I mean? If you claim that, do you know what ombudsman does is that, look, madam, what's your name, please?
Claire.
Claire, yeah, thank you. Claire's company, please, you are charging her 1,000. How much should be 500? Let's call it, I'm using this. Now, let it not be 1,000. That is their immediate, their own is just to make sure that taxpayers don't suffer and they don't need to go to court. Not all of them have the capacity to challenge their matter in the court, only the rich. Now, if this is what the ombudsman is doing, but the ombudsman is being sponsored or paid through the federal revenue, our own, like in other country. The American own was 1952, but they end up still coming to open Treasurer Inspector General for Tax Administration because Mr. Joseph D. Nunan was jailed for 5 years in 1956 because of the United States was even more organized than our own. They have CID of IRS. They have inspection service of the IRS. You understand? So, but because people are still saying the controller, because after Joseph Dunan, nobody was indicted again because he's a commissioner. He should have simply said.
So what? Because we're running out of time.
Let me just conclude.
Yes, the inspectors. What would be their specific function?
The thing is that the inspector is a silver bullet. Do you know why? Inspector General is talking about, in fact, anything called tax crime. 80% of what the mechanism to do it come from the people collecting tax.
Okay.
A taxpayer don't even have capacity sometimes. He may not be sweet to anybody, but that's the truth. We have recently in the United States in 2017 where a dictator was called upon and IRS was called upon that there was a destroyer of backup tape and emails running to 400-something billion US. The people who destroy it are the people working in the IRS, not the taxpayer. So now when they find out, the House now called them, it was a war. They said, let's go and find it, it's true. They went, it was done on Saturday. That is, the person did it on Saturday. Now, whatever plan they did and do it, they end up coming back after 8 months to tell the Congress, Congress,
well, Mr. Please. I won't talk again after you, please.
No, yes.
Wait now, do you know that they stay 8 months wait now? 8 months and come back and say they spent $18 million US and they could not find it. It's unrecoverable. Now, TikTok went 2 weeks. Let Nigeria hear it. 2 weeks and recover it. What does that tell you? Which means if there's no TikTok, 409-something billion US would have lost. So I'm insisting that we should have something that will tell the collector to know that somebody is coming behind. I'm sorry that the way my voice is, please.
No, it's okay. I know you are passionate about the point. Yes.
7 years.
Yes, I know you are just expressing.
Yeah.
You are passionate about the whole thing.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry.
And I believe that
shouting.
the authorities have heard you, and the right thing will be done.
The bill is ongoing, though.
Yes.
Sponsored by 9 people in the repo.
Yes. Because of time, we have to go to our Kano studio where we still have Sheikh Alkali to just give us, in less than 60 seconds, your parting thoughts on this tax reform. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One, I'm happy when Mr. Ayodele Tayo mentioned that they are writing the tax laws. So my problem with stamp duty is solved because I know coins, kobos, are only in CBN vaults and CBN archives. So, and that they are leveraging technology. That is also key. I have so many other recommendations, but you are giving me 60 seconds and I want to respect time. But on the whole, I'm happy. But I want Mr. Tayo to give us an opportunity to recommend to them more, maybe outside the program. Thank you, I'm grateful.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Alkali, for respecting the time. We appreciate your thoughts there, and we know that there will be more time in future because we still have so many issues to discuss on this tax reform. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. Also, we want to thank the chairman of the tax reform, Mr. Taiwo Ayodele, for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Orji, Philip Orji. Thanks so much for coming on Good Morning
Pleasure
Nigeria.
is mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now call for a break.